So I think one of the hardest problems, the hardest things that I've ever learned is to realize that it's not my problem and to pull back. And I know that this is like, so as somebody um, that cares about things, it's hard for me to take a step back and say, "Hey, this is not my problem. I don't need to care about this stuff." But I think it's like one of the most important lessons that you will learn in life is to know when it is your time to step in and your time to take a step back. And I mean, knowing it's never like it's never perfect, right? But eventually you have to take kind of like it's almost like an out of body experience that you go through where you're thinking about yourself in the third person and you're thinking about yourself as if, okay, we've got to manage the situation. How do we manage this situation given what is going on? And when you're in the moment, it's almost like impossible to step into that third person role, where you're sort of coolly thinking about yourself. It just takes a lot of cognitive processing to think about that and to do that, to kind of walk yourself through the situation that you're going through or whatever you're going through. But to take a step back and say, hey, if I was to do this better, how would this actually be? And what would this look like? If I was looking at this as somebody that's older and has already done this, how would I handle this a little better? And so taking a step back and thinking about, well, you know what? Often what you need to do is let other people make their own mistakes or really think about um, it's it's not your problem. And I know that it's like super hard to do um, as somebody that's well intentioned and wants to help out other people, but and taking that step back and saying not my problem is always going to be the right. It's often the right thing to do in many situations, and being picky and choosy what you're going to focus on, I think it's super important. Um, and it helps you navigate a lot of emotional baggage that you're going to feel. And the more that you practice this, the better off you are, where you're thinking about yourself in the third person, walking through, coolly going through different moments of your life and thinking about, okay, so this is not working out, right? Like, so normally I wouldn't suggest this like on the first go, right? Like that's obviously you care about things, but if you repeatedly do it, repeatedly have experiences in your life that are just not working out, then you need to say, wait a minute, I need to take a step back and stop focusing on this thing and focus on something else. And it's hard because you want to you want to help out, but you can't solve other people's problems. You really can't. That's not how things work. Other people need to want to get help as well, and they need to solve their own problems. So no matter how much you try and how much you're you know getting people to sort of think in a different way, you can't solve other people's problems. Want you can't will them to want to help themselves. And you need to take it's always about this stepping back and saying, wait a minute, I can't get people there. So what the only thing I could do is just do my best to be supportive, but then they have to get themselves there. And it's across the board in almost all of situations that I've gone through now. um, it's always the same thing. It's always like you got to take that step back, and then you have to wait to see if other people rise to the challenge of that particular moment. Because you're just gonna get angry, you're gonna get bitter, you're gonna get all of these emotional responses, and that's just not helpful. And it's not healthy. It's not helpful for the situation, because then it just creates a sort of downward spiral, right? Where both parties or multiple parties are just getting exasperated in it because nothing's happening, and you need to take a step back and say, wait a minute, this is how I feel. This is what's going on right now. This is how I feel, and I'm actually going to take a little bit of a step back. And you basically say that, where you walk people through the situation and you just simply say, hey, this is how I feel. I'm having these experiences. This is, I don't think that this is working, and I need to take a step back. And if you choose to, do anything about it, then, um, then you can rise to the challenge, basically. Like, not in a condescending way or anything like that, but just, in a compassionate way of trying to communicate this. But I mean, it's always the same thing, and it's in many sort of parts of my life where I have done that, and it makes a world of difference when you do that. You'll notice that that other the other party will actually rise to the challenge. They'll do really good things when they do that, especially if they have the incentive to do that. Um, sometimes they don't do that, right? Like sometimes half the time they won't, or 40% of the time they're not going to rise to the challenge. They're not going to sort of do something that you're expecting them to, that is actually really good for them. Well, if that's the scenario, then that's their problem, and they have to deal with it. Um, as you sort of learn to deal with this, to be like, okay, not my problem. You need to figure this out on your own. Um, that's when you actually, you grow as a person, and the other person is allowed to grow as well, right? And that's the key thing, is allowing the other person to learn and grow as well. They will almost always grow as a person, and they will almost um, they will realize that, wait a minute, this like how I've been handling the world is a lot different than what the world actually is. Um, so I think that that is an important lesson to think about as you're going through life. And it's almost always that sort of calculated decision in the third person, where you're thinking about, how much should I care, and how much should I be in the situation. You can go from like nothing to, you care a lot, but you need to have that calculated decision to figure that out. And it doesn't matter whether it is in parenting or relationships or, work relationships. It's always that way. Um, it's always that way, where you're thinking about how much should I interject, and how much should I actually care in this circumstance. And it's a calculated decision. If you treat it as like a calculated, not in the sense it's cold, but in the sense that you're calm, you're collective, you're put together, handling the situation well, in the third person, I think like that is helpful, and it sort of takes a lot of the sting out of um, out of it. So that's all I wanted to say. I think it's an important lesson to learn about. But take care, and have a wonderful day. Bye.